So to start this last video, maybe we'll need two just to finish this first lecture. I said I'm going to tell a little story from my young days going to my father's office. So I mentioned my dad was a partner in an engineering firm. I would note they had offices in Chicago, New York, Boston, and Abu Dhabi, of all places. So I was born in Chicago. My father was transferred to the New York office when I was around 5 years old. So I was lived in little outside of New York City until I was through my sophomore year of high school. And as I said, I started working at my father's office. It was at the one in Chicago. And I worked there the summer of my sophomore year, and the family was transferred back to the Chicago area. And so I continued. I finished my high school in a place called Naperville, Illinois, and then went on to Purdue University, which is next door in Indiana. Now, through the years, when I was quite young, I would, from time to time, go to my father's office. And it was never sort of a fun thing, I will say. I have a brother and a sister. My mom, from time to time, as I was in school and moving on, would go with my brother and sister to visit her mother in West Virginia. And so if there were school days, I would go to school. But if there was a holiday where I didn't go to school, that meant I had to get up early in the morning and go into New York City with my dad. Now, that was fun. There was a fun side to that. Got to ride the train into the city and ride the train back and things like that. But when I was at the office, Dad would have me pack a little briefcase that I had to carry. And so I could bring things I wanted to play with, or whatever. But I had, and he would arrange for me to have an empty office cubicle. And I was to go and occupy myself there all day. At noon-ish, he would come and take me, and he would take me out to lunch. And he generally let me eat whatever I wanted to eat. It was always a hamburger or a hot dog, but he treated me right there. Anyway, so this would have been back. Oh my goodness! So when I was young, we were living in New York then. So I was probably, in this incident, I was probably about 6 or 7 years old. So picture first, second grade, and it was lunchtime, and he came and got me and took me down to a place for lunch. And so we go into this place, and so picture a long, thin building, come in a door, say down that way, and there was counters. All right, and then there were counter behind, and people would mill around. So then at these counters, you had various chairs, and it probably, as I recall, the counter actually had an L to it at some point. So we'll put an L. And there would have been more chairs making their way around. And there was probably a door here that, say, flipped both ways. And somebody would come and serve us our food. Okay, and you'd order as you sat at the counter. And if you went back in the restaurant, so the restaurant probably went over this way. Here was probably the kitchen picture. And let's make this a little bigger for you. There we go. And then you'd probably in the back, as I recall, there were tables, something like, so there's one table. So hopefully you can kind of imagine that. And so I drew these three because this is Dad, All right. And right here is me, okay, 6 or 7 years old. And so we order our food, and this woman comes in and sits here. So, and so picture this woman. She's probably, I expect at the time, knowing what I know now, I would say she's probably in her mid to late 50s. And she comes in, and this is the 60s, so everybody was dressed up. My father made me dress up to go down to the office. So no jeans, no sneakers. I'm looking put together, as it were. So my dad's in a suit. The woman is in some form of dress. So she's all dressed up. And as I remember, tons of makeup on. Anyway, so she comes in and she sits here. And we have our food. A little cup, whatever. And as I recall, I had a hamburger, which would not be unusual for me. And so this woman sits down, and this is in the days of smoking. And so she walks in, she's finishing a cigarette, she starts another one, and so try to picture this woman's voice is the voice of somebody who has smoked about 50 cigarettes an hour for the last 50 years, okay? So real deep, grovelly voice. And so she has a cigarette, she takes a big puff, and she's looking at me and looks at my dad and made a comment of something to the effect of, in a really deep, almost manly voice, "What a sweet little son you have." And then she takes a puff from the cigarette and blows all the smoke in my face. And I had a quick gag, and immediately, and so here she had food over here. Actually, she had food when she did this. So she'd been sitting next to us a little while. I was behaving well. She decided to tell my dad how wonderful I was. And she says it and blows smoke in my face. I then lean over and puke all over her plate. And anyway, she immediately has something like, "Oh, I can't believe anybody would do such a thing." And my father was a strict disciplinarian, and at the age of 6 and 7, I could still get spankings, and I thought I was dead meat. He's going to kick my can for puking on this woman's food. And my dad was like, and by the way, my dad is severe asthmatic, hates smoke, always has, and back in the 60s, this was not a good time for, everybody would smoke in your face back then. And he was like, "Well, you deserved it. Why do you blow smoke in his face? That's disgusting." He's just, I was like, wow, I'm not getting in trouble for this. This is really cool. And she was furious, and she just gets up, walks out of the restaurant. And I'm feeling, I realize I'm not in trouble, but I'm like, uh-oh, what does this mean? And Dad goes, "Well, how do you feel?" And I'm like, "I'm sorry, Dad, I'm kind of still hungry." And he goes, "Oh, you want another hamburger? Could I have one?" "Absolutely." So he calls over the person that's working behind the counter, put a little hat on them, and he says, "Look, he needs another thing of food." And this was kind of the best part of it. This person goes, "Oh, I saw what he did. I can't stand that woman." The waitress was saying. She's like, "That was wonderful." She said, and she goes, "Yeah, we'll get you another hamburger," and said, "I like that so much, we're going to get you some ice cream for free afterwards." So I ate really, really well. Best puke of my life. And went back to my dad's office and eventually took the train home that day. Now, what we have here is a sketch. So I was communicating a story to you by drawing it. That's what we want to be able to do. Now, so when it comes to sketching, what are the rules? Well, there really aren't a lot of rules, but if I was to tell you what I've learned through the years when it comes to sketching, and so this is sort of a dynamic sketch related to the story, but when I watch a lot of people draw, let's say they want to draw a house, they'll do something like this. And they're constantly redrawing their lines. And it's showing they have absolutely no confidence in what they're doing. All right? When you do something and if somebody's watching, especially if somebody's watching, own it. Draw with confidence. They'll understand what you're doing. But if you communicate that you aren't confident in what you're doing, they're not going to be confident in what you're doing. I encourage you, draw with confidence. Don't just do all these squiggly lines trying to make something straight like I'm doing here. Or your hands just going back and forth. Draw the line. You don't have a ruler. It's not going to be straight. Don't worry about it. Now, the other thing is when you're drawing, put everything in proportion. So you can see I'm drawing these tables and stuff relative to the seats, the counter. I was keeping a basic proportion. There's room for people to walk back and forth over here. There's room for the waitress to do her thing. Here's a great big place where they, store various things. If you've ever been to a diner, that's like. Keep it in proportion. So if you draw a house and you have a person walking around by the house, don't draw this. Okay? This and that, they don't work together. All right? Try to keep things in proportion. That'll do tremendous things for helping people understand what you're trying to do. All right? And don't worry about being perfect. If I ever have to draw a person, this is typically what you're going to get. And maybe I'll give them a little smile. If I want to make it that'll be male. If I want it to be female, boom. Give it some long hair, okay? Simple is fine when you do what you do, all right? The only other thing about sketching is you want to try to make it as close to an engineering drawing as possible as you get better at it. But if you're going to learn how to do that, we kind of need to learn some more engineering drawing. So this last point, we're not going to worry about it too much. Okay? So what's my advice in the world of engineering drawing? Just to keep things basic. Okay? Flip this page over. 1. Maintain your horizontal reference. Okay? So, oftentimes what I'll do when I start working on a drawing, if I'm being precise, I draw a line. Typically at the bottom of the page, and this looks a little wavy. It's not wavy, it's just the camera and the resolution of that, so it's actually a very nice solid line. I'll typically put this more towards the bottom of the page, bring this down, and then whenever I need to, I can just then take that and translate it anywhere. Now I said horizontal line of reference. You could have a vertical line of reference, that's okay too. But then you measure all your angles and everything off of this, okay? Maintain a good reference line, all right? Now, part of how you can do that is off the T-square here. So I'm using my drafting table here, so here's the T-square. So to maintain that constant line, now this paper's not taped down, I'm not using the T-square, but when you are using it, always push it against the edge, and then that'll give you a constant horizontal. One thing I'll often do here, let's see if I can make this work, this is going to be challenging. So I'll bring this up on the table here. So here's the T-square, and when I'm going to use this paper for drawing later, and when I put it on, I got squared up the edge over here of the drafting table, and then I tape the paper in place, so the bottom line of the paper is actually my horizontal line. And then I just take everything, we'll go off of that as I move this around. Okay? So, the world of advice, as I said, always maintain a horizontal reference. That's really crucial. The second thing is choose a good scale. All right? When it comes to doing scales, sometimes they're standards. So in the world of architectural drawing for floor plans, there's a broad standard of doing things at the ratio of around 1/4 inch equals a foot. That is, so use the standard. But why is that a standard? Well, the idea is you want to draw something sufficiently large so that all the details can be seen, but not overly large so you're wasting too much space. So it's a combination between big and small. You need to be big enough to get all the ideas across in a very neat, uncrowded way, but you don't want to have a lot of too much open space in your drawing, so you could have made it in a smaller space and the typical trained person could still understand what you did. The idea of scale depends on what you're working with. So as we said, there are standards in the world of architecture. 1/4 inch equals a foot. Okay. But again, in the world of architecture, that's not the only one used. When you're doing, okay, you build a house, but the house is built on land. All right, so if you're doing landscaping stuff around there, you may have scales along the lines of 1 inch equals 10 feet, 100 feet, 1,000 feet, whatever it is to relative to the scale of what you're trying to get across. Choose a good scale. Don't make it microscopic. Don't make it too big. Big enough that the average person can understand what you're doing and all the details are apparent and it communicates what you need to communicate. Okay? So that's my basic advice before we start digging in and doing some drawing. And I'll be back in just a moment.